Hi everyone, we are live for the ninth rule of engagement with Jay, and I am just checking about the technology if I am live and hoping that it will be not only a happy ending but also a happy beginning. So here I'm just wondering because here, okay, we are live on YouTube. And am I audible? Yes, I am audible. And are we live on LinkedIn? Just such a thing to be live on LinkedIn without any hiccup and to have an amazing rule of engagement and room space with Mr. J. So we are live also on LinkedIn. And I know that it was short notice, yet it was crafting the amazing ending. So we are live right now, and I'm blessed now to talk about the ninth rule of engagement in storytelling. So I was a bit like scrolling the different subcategories, uh, crafting unforgettable endings, the power of closure, leaving room for interpretation, mhm, the beauty of ambiguity. Yes. And then resolving conflict, triumph in the face of adversity. Then inspiring action, catalyzing change through narrative. Identify your purpose, craft a compelling narrative. Clearly articulate the call to action. Call to action, my friend. And crafting memorable endings. Target practice, which is closure with purpose and emotional resonance. Then call to action and reflection, unexpected twist or revelation, and memorable closing line. And then for the narrative navigation, your story, your credibility. And that's it for the ninth rule buffet. So who is going to have a happy ending? My chocolate bar. So just for making me at ease, I am crafting some happy ending with chocolate and coffee. How are you feeling, my friend? Yes, compared to the last week, there is a change. There is always a change in the life. So ready to reach the moon, and if I miss the moon, I will reach the stars. So before we are going to welcome Mr. J, who can join in a few seconds, let me know and let us know how are you doing, and for you, what is a ending? Because the end is a new beginning, and a beginning is the renewal of an end, and it comes by phase. So closure, yes, is the cornerstone of a memorable ending, serving as a linchpin that distinguishes a forgettable tale from a timeless classic. Yes. And so, what is amazing is that endings in cinema, in the TV series, normally are beautiful, resolving a lot of things. Yet, for some movies, it is a sign that a new movie can come out. I remember the movies from, I think it was Batman or Superman or any other movie. So the movie is done, the all the heroes won, but then at the end, and sometimes it's also at the end of the score credit, when you see all the direction, the actors for 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 minutes, you see all the crew, and then at the end, you thought it was done, but you see the villain is still there, and he's doing a new thing. So ending could be a new beginning. And so that's very interesting when it comes to storytelling. Do we really want to end? Or do we want to create a teaser for the next chapter? Another thing that I was noticing about the end is that at the beginning, the presenter is asking a question. And he says, this, my friend, I'm going to tell you at the end. It's a trick, I think, to keep the audience attention because when it's unresolved in our brain, it means that there is still places to reflection. Yet also, it's more probably also to make the audience accountable because at the end there will be always one person in the audience that says, "Hey, sir, and what about this?" Because of course he was quote unquote forgetting. But the audience doesn't forget. So crafting good endings, it's really important. And knowing why do we want to focus on happy endings? So, Mr. J, welcome for the ninth rule of engagement. And I'm going to be bold like you. So, hello.
Hello. Thank you,
Hello.
Ali. Um, so we we're talking about what rule again?
The ninth rule, which
And the
is
reason I'm trying to, which is crafting unforgettable endings. And the reason this is important, and the reason I'm bringing attention to it, is by this point in your storytelling, you have taken people on a journey. And there's so many things at this point you need to shore up. And before I go into the different subchapters, imagine this. How many times have you watched a show, maybe a series or a movie, and you felt let down? Like the characters needed more time to end their story. And this is the delicate balance of wanting to
the story. You don't want to leave your audience hanging, essentially. I mean, that's just the bottom line. You want to make sure that each one of those characters have the opportunity to either one keep you wanting more as far as thoughts about where they could go, what they could be doing, but not in a way. Then this is the delicate balance. Not in a way that's going to say, "Oh, that that was just left me hanging in the air," but one that's hopeful for the future for these characters. You've invested so much in them throughout the book that now you want the best for them. It's almost as if they're living characters. They're actual people, especially with fiction. So those are the things that I think about,
Uh,
especially when
yeah, Mr. J, I don't know if you realized, but your mic, I was 1 minute ago, I was seeing a change in your sound, and now your mic is going on and off. But just to let you know that it was like something switch.
can you hear me now?
Yes, but sometimes it's like, can you hear me now? Something like that. The voice is. So you will have probably to bring your voice.
Let's say, are we better now?
Ah, cool. We are back.
Okay. So the it's a really delicate balance. You want to make sure that if you do leave your audience with a question, you want that to be one of hope and not one where it's not leaving them hanging. Essentially, is what I'm trying to say. And you know of some stories or shows or movies where it seemed almost abrupt. And in some cases, some series, especially series that were canceled, right? The writers are scrambling to try to come up with a story to end the show that's giving the audience what they wanted, but at the same time making sure that the characters had their chance to tell their story and come to that finality. So uh, I wonder, Ollie, when do you know of any of maybe some series or stories that you felt the ending may have felt rushed or like it wasn't final? And how did you feel about that?
Oh yeah, thank you for asking because I think it's more on TV series than on movies because movies they are always arranging for the fact that it might be the only movie, but there will be maybe another movie behind, but it's subtle, like this Batman or Superman movie where all is fine, the hero won, and then there is the credit score, like all the crew, the music composer, blah blah blah, and at the end the credits of the patent, and then at the end you see the villain is back preparing something for a couple of minutes. Same with Caribbean Pirates. With at the end there is something new, and we know that it's probably a room for the next movie and the next movie. So, but in TV series is more challenging because directors are of TV series and scenarists are cooked. with the public score, the public audience, and then the decision for the producers to say no, it was the first season or the third season, but it's not going to be more than that. So uh, there are TV series that was cancelled, like for the next season. So the at the end of the first season, I remember it was Surface. I think it's a story about uh, GMO monsters invading like dinosaurs. I don't know. And at the end of the first season, it there was a flood, and the protagonists were on within a church, at the top of the church, surviving the flood because there was a tsunami. And then you see the dinosaurs and the monsters on the water or something like that. But there were no second season. So it's like, what happened next? What happened next? Same with Lost or Heroes. It was like at the end, it was scrambling eggs. Was like, what? What is it was too much imprecise, too much unclear for having any ending possible or anything like. That's why the people says, oh, season 1 and 2 and maybe 3 was good, but 5 and 6 and 4 and 5 and 6 were really bad, because it's also a delicate balance, because the scenarists are playing on the fly. They might have an idea for the whole 6 or 8 season, but they have to adapt to audience, because then the director says, ah, we have a drop of audience, we need something new or something else. So the scenarists are completely scrambled. So it's really a challenge nowadays, even 10 or 15 or 20 years ago, but nowadays it's even more challenge, because who is watching TV? It's another media. The attention span is lower. After 20 minutes, people can say, okay, I'm closing the video. But on TV, it was like, oh, I gotta see the next episode and the next episode, but maybe not. But right now on the streaming world, the challenge is higher. What do you think?
Oh yeah, I think it is. There's definitely a lot of challenges with streaming. You have these production houses who have to deal with the big studios, the streaming studios now, and they're worried about profits and advertisers over the audience more, as it seems. And I won't mention which studios, but you there's a tendency for some shows that are series to be abruptly canceled with after the first season, even when their own marketing shows that there's high viewership, and the first season turned out very well as far as market feedback. So nowadays you can't tell what a streaming studio is going to do with their original programming based on market response. So that's, to me, one of the biggest challenges for writers out there, for storytellers. But when it comes to, but even before getting to that point, though, I think we still are a society that wants these stories to have a happy ending, to have some finality that's going to shore up the story. And when you have an audience, even in the bigger, you know, stream of things, pun intended, people have said more often these days that it could have gone a second season, it could have gone a third season, it could have gone to many more episodes, but it didn't. And that's, for some people, what I'm trying to get at is that that's the important part of storytelling, tying all the loose ends up, making sure that your audience gets what they need from the story you just brought them through, right? Imagine you're on a journey and you're looking for something. Let's say, I'll be really silly, but hear me out. Follow me with this. You're looking for a pot of gold, that proverbial pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And you go through this journey to get there, and it's a tough one. And at the final part where you're going to get the pot of gold, the rain stops and the rainbow goes away, and you don't get your pot of gold. You just went through a journey that nearly killed you. You've battled so many things to get to this point, and then it just disappears. And that's, to me, how people feel when you've just led them through their journey of reading your story or listening to your story. So, newsrooms, now I'm going to go to the newsrooms because it's the first subchapter. We talk about it briefly, but and see, I talk about it, the power of closure. Consider, and I'm reading straight from the book, consider the extensive coverage of the COVID-19 pandemic. As vaccines became widely available and infection rates declined, readers sought closure. People wanting to know about what's going on with the news, and the news specifically about COVID-19. A sense of finality in the face of uncertainty, right? What's going to happen next? What will we have to do? So journalists played a crucial role in delivering this closure, offering analysis, insights, and a semblance of understanding in tumultuous times. Now, people will argue about how we responded and what we did to keep people safe, but really, more and more towns, cities, and locations all across the globe relax their restrictions. And largely, the entire time, the news media played a really important role in keeping people informed. And also giving them that sense of finality. Everything is now opening up. Governments are easing restrictions. We're no longer in a lockdown. And them saying this, to me, brought a sense of normality back to the situation. And maybe even closure for some people. What are your thoughts?
Well, thank you so much for bringing that because I don't know if it's this week or next week, but at least I think next week in Belgium we will celebrate 5 years of the first lockdown of the because there are multiple lockdowns, but 5 years ago all the world at the same time was on lockdown. I think the last two big pandemic it's like talking about the first war, the second war, and cross fingers that it is Seconde Guerre mondiale and not deuxième, because when I say seconde in French, it means that there will no be a third. When I say deuxième, it might be having a third, like deuxième étage, troisième étage, second étage. You know that there is not a third stage. Like me bringing French, but I that there will no be any more pandemic. Cross fingers. Before that, the last one was 107 years ago, 1918, with the Spanish flu. And by the way, just bringing the history that it was called Spanish flu because Spain was the only one or the rarest to publish the data. So, but from me, I say it's really tricky. Uh, Journalism is endangered, the true journalism, because I'm not going to run too much because it's not the theme, but I truly believe that journalism for me is a bunch of sheeps, a bunch of copy carbons of, oh, I give you this order, you have to follow. And true journalism, true critical thinking is not easy because most journalists are paid to sensationalism and to they are not too much informing, they are splashing. And this is also my rant. Um, to a certain point, it's like teachers. There are great teachers, and then there are teachers that are following the rules and don't really provide memorable moments. My French teacher was one of its kind. Metropolis, Brave New World, poetry, critical thinking, the power of appreciation. That's why I do what I do, a language coach, is because I was amazed about my French teacher. And we are giving others memorable moments through emotions and through memories. That's why having a true story is important. About the COVID, let's be back to the COVID. What was memorable for me was the sudden lockdown, the fear, the atmosphere. I love to play with puns. I came into this world at the second I was expressing atmosphere. That no, it's okay, but even during the lockdown in 2021, 2022, even 2023, each time that I was in a straight street, uh, I was walking like and I've seen the people really far waiting because of the fear to be too much near me. That's why in 2020 and 2021 I was spending most of my time in the forest because I was not obliged to wear a mask. I was not obliged to this atmosphere. And so for the COVID, what I disliked also, that my emotional part, was the uncertainty. Of course, there is the kind of, oh, we are not we are not certain, but let's figure it out, and let's also listen to voices. I'm not going to quote names because names, especially one from Marseille in France, that was the black sheep. But we had to listen to all voices and not to say, this is the expert that we mandate and this is the only voice we are going to listen. So we have to listen to all the voices. And last but not least, I was also during the pandemic really, let's say, triggered by the rules that was said after they finally found a cure and produced the vaccine. There was a kind of separation, like the pass, in order you can be vaccinated and you have pass and you have access to all the amazingness of the society. Or if you are not vaccinated, you are not having a pass, and you have to cope. Like they were allowing some spaces, but I will always remember because I made my choice. I can tell you, but at that time it was like silent. I'm not telling that I'm not vaccinated, you know. And I was seeing book selling from the Red Cross, and it was interesting price. Like, ooh, why not to buy books for 50%? And they refused me the access of the book selling because I didn't have a pass, because I choose to not be vaccinated, and I was wearing a mask. So anyway, for me, it's about let's all build union and not division, because I think no at that time nobody was really owning the truth, unless those that were making the weather, let's say, because there were people out there making the weather. But I'm not going too much on to details. But for me, 5 years later, I don't see a happy ending about the COVID. Of course, it's over, but it will leave traces. And 5 years ago and now, it's a totally different world. There are things that are evolving, changing, more challenging, and I will leave you with that. Do we really learn the lesson? Do we learn the lesson about the Second War and about what did Hitler? When I see what's happening right now, I don't see any lesson learning. Hope that we are helping this generation and the next generation to be critical thinkers and to not anymore reproduce, for instance, the experiment on the 60s by Ron Jones, I think, this teacher that was reproducing in 10 days. 10 days, probably more, not more than 2 weeks, but 10 days, the same things that happened in Germany in the 30s, the third wave experiment. So that's my share. I can go on and on, but I'm also happy to listen to your insights. And thank you, Jacob, for joining. Amazing to see you live. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I agree with Jacob. Yes, it was definitely a test on so many levels, but the levels impacted all of society all across the globe. I think that's the one thing we had in definitely in common. But what I want to focus on is time marches on, and in storytelling there are arcs, and they're in plays and in shows and movies there are what's called beats, right? This is going to happen, we're feeling this is going on, right? So in the main arc of COVID, we realized one thing, right? We were all wanting to share our stories with the rest of the world. We were sheltered and locked in, and we wanted as a human race to reconnect and connect with people. That's what we had in common. And I know this is true because an entire industry was created. Zoom exists as a result of what happened during the pandemic. I mean, I remember I was using 4 different live streaming type applications at one point, communicating with a lot of people in my job, in my career at the time, all across the globe. So time marches on. The main arc of the story and what the situation was, I think we can argue about how the media handled it as well. There's so many things that happened that could have been handled a lot better, obviously. But for the most part, the openness for governments across the globe to say we've we have a handle on things, let's ease up on the restrictions. And the media had a definite hand in that, making sure that as far as this is concerned, this is over. There was a finality and that was due in part to them saying that. And yes, you know, you and I agree because I came from the news business. That's how I became a storyteller in the beginning. I've said this previously, and this is my personal opinion, that local news stations, the stations that have a direct line to the community, they know the impacts because most of these journalists live in that community. And so they have an obligation and a duty, and they feel it more so when they're local, to do that. On a bigger level, on a bigger stage with national and international news organizations, that's different. But I believe that journalists, especially ones that are not just embedded but born and bred in the community that they serve, those are the ones that try to provide the best information possible on all sides so that their community is informed, so that they can live their lives using that information in such a way that's going to be positive and impactful. Sometimes it's not positive, but it will be impactful. But as long as they're giving and disseminating that information with a standard, that means it's going to provide them with information that's going to help their lives, and live their lives, the community, in a much better way than it's those little stations all across the globe in those communities that are going to have a really good impact. That's what I believe. And that's my personal opinion. Some people may disagree, but I do believe that through the advent of social media, right, we're able to connect in such a way that the news and information is being provided on a much more grassroots level, straight to the people that need to hear it. So that, in that sense, social media helped to level the playing field. And look at LinkedIn, right? It's a media platform for jobs and careers. But you and I are here talking about storytelling and not necessary careers or jobs, but it happened as a result of LinkedIn. And LinkedIn was also, the audio events came about as a result, to me, what happened during COVID-19. That longing and wanting to share our stories with the rest of the world allowed LinkedIn to flourish as a place where all of us could come together. Some of us even went to other platforms, started there, and then migrated over to LinkedIn. Clubhouse, I can tell you, is one of those. A lot of people flocked to Clubhouse because we didn't have the cafes to go to. We didn't have the grocery stores to go to. We didn't have the bars or any of these public spaces. So Clubhouse was that public space, the global public space. And a lot of us migrated from there to LinkedIn. At the core of what I'm trying to say is there are arcs. And the main story arc of COVID-19 was that we were in a lockdown and then we were set free. And the news media, for good or bad, had a direct hand in that. And they helped to paint a picture of finality of the lockdown. We're still dealing with COVID-19's effects. We're still dealing with the fallout of that. We're still dealing as a society all across the globe, as a human race, with that continuing storyline. But the arc, when it comes to the lockdown, it ended. We are free to roam around and do things outside of our home. Whereas 5 years ago, we didn't. And so while we're talking about finality in this main storyline, this storyline of reality, we really need it. And that's part of why I created the book. Each chapter allows us to think critically about how we communicate with one another and how to really be impactful with our messages, with the stories that we share, whether it be on a brand level or just on a human level. And this is important. And hopefully, I'm going to reach the news organizations and the social media streamers who have a direct impact on the information that all of us receive. That's my ultimate purpose as the storytelling strategist, is to help others tell their story. And if we can find a way that's going to impact society as a whole, then, I thought by doing this, that's what I would accomplish, is impacting us on a level that's going to be beneficial to each and every one of us. Not just me and my audience, but me and the broader audience of the globe. Stories are going to exist whether or not this book was ever written, but how we tell them and why we tell them in such a way, that's what I wanted to impact. And I know we just got into the philosophical weeds of storytelling, but it's really important to understand that yes, COVID-19, the story, the overall arching story of COVID-19 continues. World War II, the story continues, right? But just because World War II ended doesn't mean that there aren't different storylines that have come from that. You and I both are a result of that main storyline. We have individual stories of World War II that have impacted us today. But the end of World War II happened. The media had a hand in that as well. Remember, American news outlets at the time referred to Japanese people in such a way that was not necessarily great. And a lot of it was propaganda. And so a lot of news organizations following that started to rethink how they told their stories. Before I get into any further philosophical rants, this is just the way as a society we've operated. We tell our stories in such a way that's personal to us, that's going to impact the people that the audience we want to impact. And they did it in such a way that was really personal to them. In news, you really have to be a filter that provides information that the people need. And sometimes, as human beings, we're not infallible. And so some of those stories are not going to be done in such a way that history will look positively on. And so the best we can do is tell it authentically and with as much truth from many different angles so that people get a broader view of the situation and not just the one that's personal to us. That's journalism. And I'm going to end it with this. Someone said a very long time ago when I was a cub reporter that reporters aren't robots. They come with their own biases based on their experiences. So, what makes a reporter great, though, is giving people information despite or in spite of those personal biases. Giving people the raw data to decide what they're going to do with it is important in that industry. And yes, people have strayed from that. And the industry hasn't been great throughout its history either. But as long as there are people who follow guidelines that are going to help tell the story in such a way that people will be positively impacted, that's the important part of it. That people continue to look to providing information that is going to be great in the sense that the audience is going to be informed and they're going to be able to do with it what they will, what they choose to, and not be bogged down by your bias. Now, when you have one, and when you have a story that's yours, and that's not a news story, then that's when your personal biases and all of those things that can help tell the story in such a deeper way from your perspective. Okay. And if, and that is different from the news. And this is what was hard for me when I was writing my poetry. I was so ingrained in the industry standards of being that person who had my bias, but presented facts and not used my passion, not used me in the story. That's the difference. That should be the difference in journalism. So when I'm doing my poetry, it's doing it from personal experience, my biases. You're going to see my bias. You're going to see my passion. You're going to see the empathy I have in those stories, the way it should be from my perspective, not from a broad 10,000-foot view. So you can decide either way on the topic or the issue. I'm giving you my experience so that you can either resonate with it or not. And so there was this switch that I had to turn on because I turned it off all those years as a news reporter. How can I tell this story from my perspective, with my bias, with my passion for my culture, with my passion for my language? And that's essentially where I come from when it comes to storytelling. And so in and in closing, I guess, right, the closure of this, that question that I was talking about earlier, if you're going to end a story with a question, it should be one for someone to leave room for interpretation. And let's look to Jacob and his interpretation. He says, "Thank you, Jay, for mentioning how important sharing information or keeping people informed is. I think it leaves us all with applying critical thinking skills to what we hear and constantly checking credibility." This is so true. And as a storyteller, it really is your credibility on the line. And especially with essential information that people need. Essential information that people need. Not just want, but need. And so we have a responsibility as storytellers and a duty beyond reproach that this information is going to be used in such a way that's going to be impactful, hopefully positive wise. I don't think anybody, for the most part, wants to put out information that's going to not negatively impact people. So thank you, Ali, for sharing your perspective. And there were many times when I look back to our histories, right? And that's why you and I align on so many levels, because our grandparents were impacted by World War II, and we may not have sat at the table and listened to those stories constantly, or we may have had to cajole our grandparents to even say anything about it. That connects us. Our our responses to or reactions to COVID-19 may have been different, but we were both impacted by it.
The world was impacted by different means, but the world was some countries were like fine, like Australia, no lockdown, or this kind of things, or the northern Europe, like Finland, Sweden, no such thing as we lived in France or Belgium, but we were all impacted by a mean or another.
So, a couple of things. Target practice in this chapter. Really look at it. At the end of each chapter, if you guys haven't already realized, there's two things that I do. One, I put in there target practice,
Oh.
and the other one is is the um, narrative navigation, right? The kind of addition to the entire chapter. It a lot of times it doesn't correlate. It just helps you tell a better story. Yeah. So target practice, closure with purpose. That's the last one. All right. Target practice, closure with a purpose, emotional resonance, call to action or reflection, unexpected twist or revelation, and a memorable closing line. Surprise and delight. That was one of those things, right? You can use surprise and delight at the end. Plot twists. I know I mentioned that many times. My favorite movie of all time, The Sixth Sense, with the plot twist, right? The ending, you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't. A lot of us were surprised by it. These are the things these things that I mentioned. These are the things that are going to leave a lasting impression on your audience. I'll read it again, okay? Closure with a purpose, emotional resonance, call to action or reflection, unexpected twist or revelation, and a memorable closing line. Ask yourself these questions, and I think these are really important questions. Now that we're coming to the end, is there a finality in your story? Are there any loose ends? Does a character's life just linger in the second to the last chapter of your story? And if you're having a hard time answering these questions, you might want to revisit it. Does it have a memorable closing line? Is there an unexpected twist or revelation? Is there a call to action or reflection? I'm going to tell you right now, any OSUN, Godfather LinkedIn live events, he would always get on to me about a call to action at the end of every live event. He'd be like, "Okay, what do people are going? What are people going to expect next? You have to tell them." Oh, that's right. My book is coming out on December 12th. December 12th. Oh, okay. Emotional resonance. We talked about emotion. We talked about making sure that we're not scared of adversity, because with that comes those emotions, and closure with a purpose. Closure with a purpose. All of these things are important. And I hope that this book club that Ali has created and allowed me to be a part of has helped you realize the importance of storytelling and how you tell your story. Ali, thoughts?
Well, my headphones were really off, but and this is not the end because there is still one little bit, the 10th rule of engagement, which is practice and refine, like rinse and repeat, because I truly believe that this is not like a marble stone. A story can evolve and adapt according to our thoughts, but also about our audience, about our practice. Ooh, okay, my camera. Um, so I'm really blessed because this is, I think, the first book that I read from the page one to the last page. But of course, it was like, ooh, let me read it 1 or 2 hours before, and it was like, "Ugh." But I'm still like that. But at least I'm doing it, and it was from my heart to yours because you are doing these amazing Jay and Friends events since 2 years already, and we are now on March 2025, and it's going to be practice and refine what we learned, adapting to the recent times. So you were talking about the news and about our grandparents. 60, 80, 100 years ago, we were relying on information official, like radio, newspapers, and all controlled by a simple organism. Right now, and since already, in fact, more than 10 years, almost 20 years, we have multiple channels of information right now: LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, or X, TikTok, YouTube, you name it, probably more than 100 of different channels and thousands of different medias. But some are like 80, 90% are controlled, and the 10% are the most important because there are thousands and thousands. What I really want to convey is that critical thinking and relying on choosing the source is important. That's why also for journalists is even more difficult and complex than before, because they have to make their diligent work. And even with that, sometimes they because I was doing my best to say, okay, I get a 36 different source, it conveys the same, but it was fake. So nowadays, especially with AI, it will be more and more difficult to say what is true and what is false. And that's really something that is triggering for me because it's about let's get unite us and not divide us. But when it comes to information, it's like, you are the wrong, I am the right. But is there any wrong or right? So I think the most important is to find a way to coexist to each other. And first, before I make the metaphor about a special movie, that I truly aspire that we can be as a human species. I would like to say to you thank you, because you are bringing on the table your heart and multiple hats, because you are a speaker, you are also a writer, you are a storyteller, you are a journalist, you are a call center. You have a lot of things within you that you a luggage that you can give it to us. And hi, Juicy. Also, thank you so much for joining, and see you soon. Feel free to watch the replay. And I crave for a world that is a bit like was like Return on Earth from Star Trek. It was the episode 4. So they go back to Earth, and then there is this kind of a UFO entity that is searching for the whales. And guess what? In the 23rd century, there is no whale anymore. So they have to find a solution, because this entity is disrupting all the oceans, all the. I don't know if you were watching this movie. And they go back to Earth. Yeah, they go back to Earth in the 80s. And that was amazing, because then you see a crew adapting to the 80s, you with the outfits like the Mr. Spock, with their with his hat, because they imagine you are seeing a Vulcan in the 80s, what. And they have to adapt to the 80s world. And at some point, it's like confronting the society, the actual society, like the doctors. Like you remember the scene where one of the crew was kept in the hospital after being irradiated or whatever, and they try to put him out of the hospital. And you see the doctor saying what's happening in the 80s. What? Like, how come? And then okay, this amazing scene where at the beginning of the hospital scene, he was checking an old lady. Oh, I'm bad, I'm bad. Okay, let's do this. Let's eat. You can eat this. And at the end, they were pursuing to get out the crew. And you see the lady, I'm alive, I'm happy, it was crazy. And then really challenging the actual society about the healthcare. That's what I crave to see, a world that is waking up, that we say, this, my friends, is the old paradigm. You shall not pass, and to see, okay, let's unite together. Let's build a world without any border, without any division, without any fear, where everyone is part of this new world. No one is left aside. No community members, as Marsha said, is are caught in the unhoused situation. That every human being can live in abundance. I'm not like a kind of a John Lennon imagine, because it's already more than 40 years that this song. But I really crave that each of us is taking responsibility to have their own stories, to tell their own stories, and to partake to a story of humanity that is elevating. That's my craving. Thank you so much, Jay, for allowing me to speak that. And thank you, Juicy, Jacob, and everyone on the replay team for watching. Because I have my own darkness. It's like a journalist is a human being beforehand. And it's a challenge to stay strong and to say, I have my own identity, I have my own personality, I can be one with humanity. But let's hear from each other. Let's also be open. Like this famous quote, I might not agree with what you say, and especially if you are a jerk or a troll, I might say, nope, not in my space, but I will allow you to express anyway. At a certain point, if you are harming people, if you are saying bad about people in front of me, no, you shall not pass. But at least that you are able to express if your opinion is different from mine. Because if we cannot create a space where every opinion is able to be expressed, then we will perpetuate what happened during dozens and hundreds of years, division, dissensions. So it's really on a place of on time right now, 2025, since already a few years, we are more connected than in the past. And what happened in any part of the world could trigger us. Like it was in the pandemic, December 2024, December 2019 in China, and then all the lockdown, all at the same time. The whole world was like, wow. So I would be happy to say that pandemic will never happen again, but never say never. We never know what's happening. But let's do it as a human species and to be united. Let not any dark force divide us. That's my departing message. And of course, you will see next week for the 10th and last rule, practice and refine. It's about the process of elevating. It's not a checkbox, it's a muscle. And so it's about me, Oli, doing my best to live into this world and to elevate myself. And I elevate myself by elevating others. So thank you, Jay. What are your final thoughts about that?
I just want to thank you for allowing the space and for having the discussion with me and sharing your thoughts with me, sharing your story. And you're right. Through story time with Jay and friends, I learned that really there's a lot of differences in the world between people and between races and cultures. But the more we shared our stories, the more I find the unity in community, the common unity in all of us as human beings. I say it over and over again. I think this is my mantra for 2025. We all know emotions. We all know loss, pain, hurt, joy, love, all of those things that make us humans. We know that. And we know it all across the globe. We just may be different in our religion, our faith, or how we respond or react. But we all know these human emotions, these traits that we have. And the more we share our stories, we're going to see that unity and commonality. And hopefully that will overcome our fear of those differences that divide us. And that, I think, is the greater purpose of storytelling and me wanting to help everyone tell their story. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And I was quoting what I loved the most. I was seeing this 3-minute video from Maya Angelou. I am human. Nothing human is alien to me. And the synthesis about that is that every one of us has the component of people like Hitler and Mother Teresa. Every one of us. The only difference is what do we choose? Do we choose to go in the path of darkness, or do we choose to do constructive things? And for me, it means also to stand on our value, to be grounded on our value, and to say, this I will do, but this I will not do because it's dividing people. So when I share my story, it's about, am I in peace? am I willing to use my story to elevate humanity? Because there is no such point, and it's especially in the recent times. But let's back to the Second War and Germany. My grandfather was deported in Germany during the Second War. I was not aware. He was not telling me a story, but it's it was a challenge for people in the 50s, in the 50s and the 60s to say, okay, this story is over. There is still wounds, but am I going to pardon Germans for what they did? Are we going to unite? So that's why Europe was created with the pillars of France and Germany. And that, my friend, is really something that is in my heart, not because of my grandfather, but because of what we see right now, extremism, like the extreme right party in Germany. That's bothering me. What's bothering me is that the gurus on the world are agitating, are putting their nose in political affairs, whether it's Russia in US or Elon in Germany or anywhere. For me, it's about let us build humanity that is united and let no force divide us, because we as a human species are living on earth 8.2 billion people right now, and we cannot afford anymore to repeat the story of the past, because it's going to cause more harm, and this world is on the verge of, we gotta make a decision right now. Are we going to unite and solve the problems in this world bit by bit, individual per individual, or are we going to be in constant whirlpool of division, of manipulation, of fear and hate? So for me, it's really important that um, we are doing our best with our individual vehicles to convey peace, love, union, and also to stand, to be grounded with our values, to stay. I'm not going into this wide pool of fear, this wide pool of gossip. It's really to say, okay, um, no more losing time, because we gotta choose constructively what is the world that we are going to live, which might not be in your space, which might not be in my space, but in a space that we both desire to co-live and to respect each other's, our difference, our religion, our cultures, our choices, and to find a space where no one is harming each other's. But there is also a quote that is really important. There is enough abundance, and that's from Gandhi, I think. There is enough abundance for each of us to live on earth. But for people that has greed, there is no abundance. For people that has um, long teeth to occupy the most space possible, to have 30 villas, I exaggerate, but and 25 cars, it's not possible for the whole mankind. And especially to nurture this, I was seeing Marsha post about American Dream. What is American Dream? It's a construct that we have to all have a villa, one or two cars, possessions, whatever. No one is able to afford, each of us to afford that. But to have a roof, to have people around, to have enough food on our plate, we don't need to have a buffet of things each day. So it's about using the space and finding restoration of heart, and restoration in this world of nature. And what is craving me is that and I'm not going to be the rabbit hole of being political about that, but in 45 days, I've seen so much harm for humans and potentially for nature, because now I see an order to destroy the forest, to remove all the leaves of natural parks. This, my friend, is the red flag. this is disastrous. Because in 4 years, what's going to happen if in 45 days is going to already take this spent? So for me, it's about standing, grounding, and to say to anyone who is harming the environment, who is harming humanity, you shall not pass. And that's really what is standing humanity to people that are quote unquote kissing the ring, is to stand on humanity, no matter what. Humanity first. That's my claim. That's my rant. And I can talk about a long time about that, but we are going to the end and see you tomorrow for the tomorrow next week for the next chapter. Practice and refine. Continue honing your skills through regular application and improvement, resulting in the mastery of crafting compelling narrative. And mastery is a muscle. It's not a final destination. It's not a checkbox, and it's the intention, day after day, month after month, to always elevate our story and elevate the people that are surrounding with. So that's why I'm really blessed to be part of that. That you said yes. So, Mr. J, last word before I close this session.
I I'm now part of a nonprofit organization. I'm proud of uh, that is about conservation, and conservation isn't about overusing resources, about stripping the resources of any land down to the bare ground. It means being responsible for what's here in abundance. We realize as human beings, we're going to have an impact on our environment. How we impact our environment, though, is the question. Now, we can be preservationists and not touch a thing. I think that's a bit of a fantasy. Or we can be conservationists and understand our role as human beings on this earth, that we can make sure that we're stewards of our environment and our community. And recently, two things have happened to me, and I'll end it with this. I went to a nature center where scientists were studying how fire impacts the forest and actually used it in such a way that was positive to the environment. They did this decades ago for the timber and forest industry. And now that research is part of that industry. But they realized that it can be beneficial to the environment. And so what is meant to be destructive can actually be beneficial. And as human beings, we should be stewards of our environment. And I met this woman, and oddly enough, she had a connection to Guam. And so it endeared me to her. Her brother actually lived on Guam for a time and married a woman who grew up on Guam, and she visited Guam. And we talked about a wildlife refuge on the island and how that's being impacted by the potential for a military firing range to be brought to the area. And I know I'm passionate about talking about my heritage and culture and the environment there, but it still surprised me that I wept in front of her and my coworkers. And I realized that this next chapter of my life working at with the nature center, that it had a direct correlation to my passion of storytelling of my culture, my heritage, and the environment that I grew up in. And then yesterday, my mentor in the culture and storytelling called me to say that he was in the hospital and that his heart and his kidneys were failing. And I'm sharing these two stories because as human beings, I believe we have an obligation to our descendants to share our story so that they don't repeat the mistakes and the sins of their ancestors.
Yes. And you remind me, because it's so amazing, because it's, for me, it's full circle for you, because you are connected again to people visiting Guam. And also you talked about the preservation of nature. In March, I think there is an International Day of the protections of the rivers. And that's also so important. And it's really amazing that you are, not amazing, but apropos that you are talking about your friend, because it's also, there is a day in March about awareness about the kidney. There is an International Day of the kidney awareness, and that's why also we need international days, like the Women International Day on the 8th of March. And today is the Women Judges International Day. And for me, it's like, as a storyteller, we might have an International Day of storytelling, but we have storyteller 24, 365. Like there are women 24 hour and 365. It has to be aware each day. Although it's really nice and important that it's like there is a World International Day. But at the same time, it's like, I'm a human being 24/7. So it's about living in our purpose, doing our best during our time on earth to embody our value, to be doing our inner work also, and to do our best to elevate the world. And I would say you, but we are elevating this world. I'm truly believe. This is affirmation. This is not only the future. This is affirmation. This is the present tense. We are elevating the world by also looking on our inner darkness and the darkness of the society, and to see, okay, what's next, bit by bit, and also bring some spirituality on it, uh, connecting with Jesus and God, and to be guided, because there is a external force that is doing this powerful play that we are still on, and that we might contribute a verse until our last breath, because our grandparents are no ethereal. They are angels, or in on heaven. They cannot do anything more. We are alive. As long as we are breathing, we are the 7% richest people on earth, because the rest, like 100 billion people lived on earth, but they are not living anymore. We can still write our chapter. And at some point, the book will be done, will be out of earth, but we can still write our chapter day by day. So thank you, Jay, for this amazing adventure. I'm really blessed that even across thousands and thousands of miles, we are still connected. And brother, Zuhus
Yes.
Mahasi.
Sizus Maasi. Thank you.
See you the next Monday for the last chapter. Practice and refine, rinse and repeat, because it's an adventure.
It is. Thank you all. Bye bye, everybody.